Welcome to Manga Mavericks at Movies, the show where we talk smack about movies, and we record out of order and release in whatever, and we have a backlog of 20 episodes that haven't come out yet. And this will probably come out before that. I don't know. I guess we'll just roll with it. We're just rolling with it. And we still haven't come up with a better catchphrase. Has we Lord GPC.
No. Also, what's the last episode we've actually released?
The last episode we released was Sword Art Online Ordinal Scale.
Jesus, that was ages ago.
That was in March, yeah. And we recorded, how many podcast episodes since then
At
that I haven't put out?
25 or something?
Okay, that's a little overestimating.
I don't know, we've recorded a lot of them.
We have recorded a lot of them. I am going to say that this episode should come out before the end of August. I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers. Who knows? It may come out on September 1st, whatever. Before Labor Day.
It's gonna come out August of next year.
I mean,
you know what? That's pretty sad, but I wouldn't put it past me considering the backlog. But no, I'm gonna expedite this one. This is gonna be episode 6, instead of the Ghost in the Shell. That'll be, I don't know, episode whatever.
Oh god, that episode's still not out.
It's not. That's a shame because that episode is so relevant to what we're going to be discussing today in terms of a really bad American adaptation of a beloved Japanese manga franchise.
Except slightly less offensive.
Slightly less offensive. But we actually have a guest on today for the first time since episode 2 talking about One Piece Stone Gold. We've got Colton on to talk about the Death Note movie. We're gonna have this as a little follow-up to our Death Note discussion on Manga Mavericks proper.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm glad to get to talk more about Death Note, and yeah, everybody listening, you should really go listen to that episode of Manga Mavericks. Honestly, I'll be real, I wasn't really sure about how I did in that discussion, but listening to it again, I think I really enjoyed it. So I really want people to listen to that and enjoy it. So
it turned out really well.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of great positive feedback on it. That was a great discussion.
Yeah, it sounded good when re-listening to it.
I agree.
So this is a good follow-up to just kind of go over some things we might have missed while talking about the live-action Netflix film. But let's talk about our preconceptions going into this film, what we thought this film was going to be like. Because this film was in the works for 10 years. It was first announced that Hollywood studios were interested in making a live-action Death Note film since 2007. So literally, it's been a 10-year process to get to this point for this movie to finally come out. For the longest time, Warner Brothers seemed to be the guys who were really into making this a movie. Zac Efron was rumored to be attached to the project to play Light.
Oh, I remember all those memes.
Shane Black was hired to direct the film back in 2011, and there was creative differences between Shane Black and Warner Brothers because Warner wanted to change Light's backstory into one of focusing on justice to one about vengeance, which ultimately is kind of what the Netflix film was about.
Yeah.
And they also want to remove Shinigami from the story entirely. And so, Black was like, no, I'm not doing that. So, Warner Brothers, kind of squashed the film. It went through a few other director changes, but they just ultimately kind of gave it up and handed it over to Netflix because of, some other things going on at Warner Brothers in terms of, what they wanted to do in terms of their studio output and whatever. But yeah, so Netflix in 2016, confirmed that they bought the rights to the film from Warner Brothers. They got a budget of $50 million, and they got Jeremy Slater to write the script and Adam Wingard to direct, and then they began production on it pretty quickly after they announced that they got it. They announced they got it in April 2016, and then June 2016, they started filming and stuff. So, I mean, the process behind, the movie being made, though, in terms of casting, that had been already decided as far back as, late 2015. I think the changeover from Warner Brothers to Netflix happened even after they decided on the casting. It's hard to get a full background on how the production timeline went, but I think we can assume that in 2015, since that's when it was announced that Adam Wingard was going to direct the film, April 2015, that's when things really started to roll forward with this, and that's where we led to the movie coming out today in August of 2017. And so yeah, this was a long, roundabout process into getting this movie made. It took 10 years, but it happened. We got a live-action Death Note movie.
So they wasted $50 million on this train wreck.
Yeah, that sure added to Netflix's infamous debt that they're carrying right now.
Like, apparently they've, like, taken... You know how they were, like, promoting it on, like, the banners of the website?
Yeah.
Apparently they've removed it from there now.
Already in one day.
Wow. Yeah, they're no longer promoting it.
It must have not done well. I mean, critical reception, obviously, but in terms of streaming numbers, I guess their marketing push did not play out well.
Wow.
So what were your preconceptions of the film? My preconceptions, going into this, looking at all the trailers, and like hearing about what they were going to do with it, I actually did have optimism about this film. I thought that, the concept of Death Note is just so simple that there is no way you couldn't get it right. This was a film that I thought would work well in live action because there isn't that many fantastical elements. Like, you can easily capture the concept that captures the imagination of so many people that makes Death Note this, like, wide-reaching and enjoyable franchise, even people outside of the anime sphere. So I thought they could do it. I thought that, in the right hands, you could make a good live-action Death Note movie for North American Western audiences. So, I wasn't, like, totally sold on trailers, but when Mutter's Basement started doing his breakdown of those trailers, like, and started picking apart kind of, like, some of the ideas that those trailers seemed to be presenting, I started to get a little more interested in, like, how they would approach this as an interpretation. Because clearly this would not be the same kind of story as we had come to expect from the manga, because this version of Light was going to be different, the setting was different, and for me, what was going to be most interesting is how you're going to take this idea of justice, which in, Japan, the idea of killing people, the death penalty, that is a really extreme thing that they don't advocate. But here in the US, you have people who do advocate the death penalty, who see that as a just thing. So there's, like, extreme cultural differences that would make the presentation of Death Note different. And I thought if the writers were smart and they tapped into the Western concepts of justice and what those mean and how that relates to our current social political climate, they could make a really interesting movie that reflects upon our culture and society of today in the same way Death Note sorta did for Japan back in 2003. But so that's what I was holding out hope for. What about you, Elord? What were you thinking going into this movie?
Okay, so when the first trailer came out, I was pretty negative on it. At the time, I hadn't read or watched Death Note, but I could tell right away, yeah, this isn't like Death Note. It doesn't seem to be going for its own thing, and I was kind of like pretty down on it. But then like you said, after Mother's Basement released his, like, trailer analysis video, I started to be a bit more optimistic. And then when people saw previews of it at Anime Expo and said it was, like, okay, I was like, maybe this is gonna be, like, an Edge of Tomorrow type thing. Mm-hmm. Where, like, it's not, like, a completely faithful adaptation of, like, the Japanese source, but it still has similar elements and it still seems to understand what the original material was going for.
Yeah, the early review that came up on Anime News Network was overall pretty positive. It was really vague about the actual details in the movie, but upon reading that review and the early impressions of other people who attended that screening, I thought that, this movie would turn out to be, at the very least, innocuous. A pretty decent interpretation, if not outstanding.
Yeah, so, like, I was cautiously optimistic, but once we saw the film, all that optimism died, within 5 minutes.
That's true, but Colton, what about you? What were your initial impressions?
Well, as I've talked about on other podcasts, I am just kind of against the idea of a lot of these live-action anime adaptations. I don't care about them. I don't think they really serve a purpose at all, and I'm pretty down on them in general. But with Death Note, after seeing trailers and like you guys were saying, I saw the same Mother's Basement video, I was cautiously optimistic too. Like I realized pretty early on, the more I thought about it, that, yeah, this isn't going to be exactly like the source material. And at some point, I felt okay with that. Like, I was okay with seeing a different interpretation of the story and the concept of Death Note. I was, like, again, like, I agree with V-Lord that I was pretty cautiously optimistic as well, and I was even sort of defending the movie a little bit, because, you know, obviously there are going to be people out there who are going to sort of, you know, pan the movie even before it was released. Like, I had seen people all over Twitter and on Rotten Tomatoes already condemning the movie before it was out, which, like, this is before the movie came out, so I didn't really think those were completely fair, because, like, you can't, in my personal opinion, you can't really, like, pan something or really criticizing it without seeing at least a little bit of it. So I saw a lot of that, and I was kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I wanted to believe that it would be good. Did it turn out great? I have very mixed opinions, I'll just say that. Again, I don't think I'm going to be shitting all over it like you guys seem to be ready to do, but I do think the movie has problems that we'll obviously get into here a little later.
You know, it's interesting that you say that you are not very enthusiastic about live-action adaptations of anime and manga, because I used to be that way, but having seen, just in recent years, some really good live-action adaptations of anime and manga properties that I didn't think could work, like Rurouni Kenshin, that trilogy of films. Like, I had seen clips and snippets of those movies before, and from those clips and snippets, I didn't think it looked very good. When I actually went to the theater and saw those movies in full, like, I really enjoyed those. And Rurouni Kenshin is a story, like, it is very over the top. It is very manga-ish, but they translated it into live action really well. There is some goofiness in there, but overall, those are really well-made movies. And I've seen other really great live-action adaptations as well, like Bakuman, which is very relevant to this, of course, considering the source material is written by the same mangaka duo. But, you know, Bakuman is, again, a story that's very, like, grounded in kind of the real life without too many fantastical elements. But at the same time, the Bakuman manga is such a manga. It is a shonen manga about making shonen manga, and that is, like, part of its appeal.
Yeah.
So you do lose something. And we saw with the anime how much was lost when they kind of translated that story into another medium. But the live action film, it really worked in terms of what they...
He hit it on point. Like,
yeah.
As a person who's only, like, read a few snippets of Bakuman, it's, like, great. It really kind of captures you into, like, the whole, like, mangaka lifestyle. There was, like, this one cool scene at one point where, like, they have this whole sequence of them drawing panels, and the papers are just flying all over the place, like this big, like, over-the-top shonen battle. It's awesome.
It's so great. That's like a live-action manga done right. That's like taking the stylization, the attitude of a shonen manga and doing it right in live action and making it so entertaining. Well, in a good way, not in a so bad it's a good way, in a legitimate good way. So,
can I just say real quick then, I want to backtrack a little bit. You're right. There are, I guess I should say specifically, I'm not into Hollywood live-action adaptations of these things, because I have failed to see one that I have really enjoyed. I know a lot of people like Speed Racer, though. I hear that one's pretty good, and I kind of want to check that out, but other than that, I haven't been very impressed. And I want to make that distinction because I've gone on record, you know, talking on Manga Mavericks about, like, how excited I am to see stuff like the live-action Fullmetal Alchemist movie. Like, that looks like it'll be pretty decent, I think. So I will give you this, that I think the Japanese live-action adaptations of stuff tend to be not only more faithful, but just better executed in general, even if they don't always have, like, the budget that Hollywood does. So I did want to make that distinction, but I think we can agree that most of the time, if not all the time, Hollywood adaptations of anime aren't very good, or at least they don't always hit the point.
Right. I mean, we can certainly attest to that with Ghost in the Shell just earlier this year. This year, it makes two big cases for Hollywood not being able to make a good live action adaptation of a manga franchise. But as for the Japanese end, I mean, obvious comparison between this film and the Japanese Death Note live action films, I haven't really seen too much of those. But from what I have seen, they are pretty well made and faithful adaptations of the source material that most fans seem to enjoy. So you can do Death Note in live action well, because we have those Japanese films to testify to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, outside of Ryuk, there's not enough, like, fantasy elements for it to feel, like, weird and out of place in live action, so it can easily work. It's just, like, can you handle the material, and do you understand what the material's going for?
And heck, with a good budget and, like, great CG artists, you can make something like Ryuk look really good.
Which this film kind of fails to do.
I think that's something we'll actually disagree with in terms of how Ryuk was portrayed. But, yeah, so preconceptions of this film just in general. Some of us had optimism. Mainly me. I had the optimism. You guys were cautious. But you weren't, like, outright gonna dismiss it. You were gonna watch it for yourselves.
Yeah.
And, like, see. So,
I need to experience the disappointment firsthand.
Yeah, so let's move on to our viewing experience. So, yeah, you were talking before, Colton, about those early Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and I gotta tell you, those really did kill my buzz to begin with, because, you know, whenever I see a rotten score for, like, a movie that I was looking forward to seeing, my heart really sinks a bit, because I'm like, am I really gonna go see that now? Should I go see that now? You know, it even doesn't have to be, like, totally rotten, but if it's, like, in the 60% or even 70%, I'm like, should I even go see this now? Because it doesn't seem like it's really that worth it. Obviously, for this film, we were gonna see it because, for one, we didn't have to pay additional money to see it because it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
And then two, we were planning the podcast about it, so there was a reason to watch it. But I don't put that much stock in Rotten Tomatoes scores, to be perfectly honest. Like,
Me neither.
Rotten Tomatoes is not an overall objective indicator of, like, whether a movie is good or not.
Well, apparently Hollywood thinks
It's
so.
an aggregate. Well, yeah, but they are misguided.
I mean, obviously, why would Pirates of the Caribbean 5 have such a rotten score? Obviously, people just don't get it.
Yeah. The thing that a lot of people miss, and there was this great video by Screen Junkies recently that broke down, like, what Rotten Tomatoes really is. Obviously, it's an aggregate site that takes reviews from just a bunch of different critics, and then it determines whether those reviews are positive, aka fresh, or negative, aka rotten, and then kind of just, like, finds, like, a percentage average of the number of positive reviews. But, like, that doesn't tell you that much, because, like, you can have a lot of, like, reviews that are positive but aren't that enthusiastic about the movie.
Yeah.
Or a review that's negative but doesn't say that the movie is really that bad. It just didn't appeal to that particular reviewer or critic. So the whole binary system of the fresh, raw, and dynamic is, like, fundamentally flawed and isn't, like, a good judge of, like, how good a movie is. So you shouldn't put that much, like, stock into the rotten and fresh categories. More accurate is, like, the aggregate score, like the average score rating that they put under the tomato meter percentage. Those are a little more accurate, since those are, like, taking the scores from the reviewers themselves and then weighing it on a 1 to 10 scale. So, yeah, you can notice a lot of discrepancies if you just look at the tomato meter score and then you look at the aggregate review score, because they can tell different stories there. But just in general, when I see, like, a rotten score for a movie I was interested in seeing, I'm like, okay, so critical reception to this is not looking great. And then I also check, you know, the average review score, and that's also, well, that doesn't say very good things to me, whether I should go see it. And of course, you know, I also play stock in, like, the audience percentage, because that's actually even more valuable to me than the critics percentage, because sometimes, like, audience members are going to enjoy it more than, like, the critics will necessarily.
Yeah.
For a lot of cases. But, you know, obviously, with this movie, it was not positive on any metric. On any critic review site that you go to, it was not positive.
Okay, can I just say just something I kind of want to put out there is that I didn't put a lot of stock into early reviews myself, because part of the reason I feel like people were just panning this from the get-go, I feel like one of the main reasons is that coming from, you know, the anime and manga community in general, you know, fans of the source material, you know, who are expecting it to be one-on-one like the manga or the anime are gonna hate it no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why, for this movie in particular, I didn't put a lot of stock into early reviews for this movie in particular, because I knew there were going to be a lot of people coming from that angle, just personally.
But honestly, even more than the reviews, I just remember, I needed to bring this up, is that I was also seeing, people watching it and tweeting about it. And that was more important to me, because everyone I follow in my feed, of course I trust their opinion a lot.
Yeah.
So, and so people were tweeting about it, and, it was still mostly negative from everyone who I saw who was tweeting about it. They were saying that this movie had some really dumb things. They were posting, clips of White's, hilariously over-the-top girly scream when he first sees Ryuk. And so I was already given the impression that, okay, this movie is going to be really, really dumb, and it's not going to be very, very good. The only positive review, the only person who was, tweeting positively about the movie was Maxie.
Yeah, Maxie's, tweets gave you a little bit of hope. It's
But even then, he was saying that there were, things wrong with it.
Maxie, which you'd say really goes out of his way, I think, to be positive, which sometimes I really admire about him, but other times, I don't know. for this in particular,
I like that Maxie always looks the bright side of things.
I do too.
Series. Yeah.
Sure, but also specifically the things he was saying that he liked about it didn't necessarily sound appealing to me.
I agree, yeah.
He had a positive impression of it, but I was not super sold compared to all the other things everyone else on the feed was saying about it, including you, Colton, since you had seen the movie before we did, and at around noon or whatever.
Yeah,
So actually, I'm gonna seg into your experience, since chronologically you saw this before even we did.
The Death Note trauma timeline.
So, okay, so my viewing experience then, I guess as long as we're talking about our personal Twitter feeds, my side of Twitter wasn't always super negative about it. A lot of the people on my timeline, at least, were really trying to look for the positives where they could, but, a lot of the people I follow on Twitter did acknowledge that, this movie overall is a mess, and it's not really all the way great, obviously. But, I guess as far as my viewing experience goes, I was looking forward to it. Actually, the closer time got to the release of the movie, I was actually getting kind of excited for it a little bit. I was actually really looking forward to seeing how this would go and how this would be adapted. And, I got myself some pizza, I went to my room, I went to my little entertainment center. I just had, the Friday it came out, I had the day off of work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to look forward to some pizza and some Death Note. This will be fun. So, I was going into it expecting a good time, I wasn't, actively dreading it like everyone else was. But then by the time I got to it, or I guess by the time I finished it, I was just kind of my thoughts were really kind of all over the place at the time. There were parts of the movie I really liked, and then there were other parts of the movie I just did not agree with as far as the interpretation of the movie goes, which that's something I've been kind of having trouble with in trying to criticize the movie, is that it's really hard for me to not criticize the movie as an adaptation, because this movie is its own interpretation, and it does things differently to an extent, but it still borrows enough from the source material for me to be able to separate it from the source material. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So while I was watching the movie, I can't really separate the source material from my mind. So throughout most of the movie, I'm like, okay, that character wouldn't do that. Okay, this wouldn't happen. Why are they doing this? I almost want to say it almost ruined my experience for me, but that's just me personally. I don't know. It's really hard for me to judge this movie on its own without the source material, and I wish I could not do that, but I just can't help it.
Well, we'll talk more about how this movie fares as an adaptation/interpretation a little bit later. But first, let's quickly go over our viewing experience, Wheeloid. And like you, Colton, we were also eating pizza while watching this movie, though we were having it at dinner time.
It's a pizza movie.
Yeah. We finished our work for the day, and so we did our exercise, and we were just waiting on pizza so we could go watch this movie, and all that time I was wondering, do I really want to watch it? Should I just bail and maybe we can just watch Defenders or OKKO or something more?
Well, we did end up watching Defenders, and
we did end up watching Defenders after the
and
movie.
It was way better than this
it
fucking
was.
movie.
Oh,
it was.
yeah.
So we watched the movie, eating pizza, and almost immediately we found things questionable about the film. Just the way it opens up and like right before the title appears, we were like, what? That's how you're opening the movie? Really? You're gonna open up with this lame scene just showing like the campus of the school, and you're not gonna open up with like something more interesting, like showing the Shinigami world. You're not gonna just open up right from the Death Note falling down. You're not gonna even have the Death Note fall down first before you reveal the title of the movie. You're just gonna have the title first and then have the Death Note fall down.
Yeah, that made no sense.
Yeah, so from the get-go, and we were finding things questionable about how things were presented in this movie. It did not get better from there. At the half-hour mark, I was like, well, how much do we have left? And you're like, an hour and 10 minutes? God damn it. And then, half an hour later, I also asked you again, how much do we have left? And we were like, 45 minutes. God damn it. Literally 15 minutes later, I did the same thing and we're like, half an hour? Gosh damn it. And this was during the freaking chase scene, too, between Light and L. We're like, what? There's half an hour left.
Yes, Sid, the chase scenes. The best part of Death Note from the manga.
Yeah, so there were like 4 times where we just paused the movie to check how much time was left because we were like, okay, when is this gonna be over with? Are we getting close to the end here? Come on. This movie... We both felt it really dragged, right?
Yeah, it definitely did.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be checking the time if we didn't think it dragged. We weren't wondering, okay, we gotta be getting somewhere here, right? But
it's funny because I felt like the beginning kind of breezed through a lot of things pretty fast, actually.
Well, honestly, that first half hour did accomplish a lot, but just
the way it's presented just felt so slow, though.
That's fair.
Plot beat wise, a lot of things are happening, but it just isn't interesting.
It isn't because they honestly should have spent more time in everything they did in that first half hour so that we could at least get to know and care about what's going on first. Because things just happen in that first half hour, I feel.
That's fair.
But we can go more specifically into that now as we talk about this movie as an adaptation/interpretation. Or unless there's something else about our viewing experience you want to mention. Like maybe... your total, anger at the end of this movie. You really hated this.
Yeah, I kinda did.
Yeah, you were yelling. You were saying, I think this is worse than Ghost in the Shell.
Whoa!
Okay,
that's
at
like a
first
swear
I thought
word
that.
around here.
At first I thought that. But then after reflection, I'm like, this doesn't piss me off nearly as much as Ghost in the Shell did.
Yeah.
After Ghost in the Shell, I just felt dead inside. This just made me angry.
That's what I said too. I was saying, and you can hear it on that Ghost in the Shell podcast, which to really get out. But yeah, I was freaking dead inside watching Ghost in the Shell. That was a soul-crushing experience. With Death Note, it was stupid. It was really stupid, but I didn't find myself betrayed that much, and that ties into my opinion about this movie as an adaptation/interpretation. See, the reason why I found Ghost in the Shell so appalling is that it was literally trying to recreate the original film, but it was just doing it so badly. And it was doing exact scenes from that original 1995 movie, recreating them
for no reason.
And it just did not work because everything they do in terms of execution just does not mesh. They took scenes from the original film, removed it from context, and removed the meaning that was behind those original scenes, and it just turned out to be, lifeless, soulless. There was no ghost in that shell of a movie.
They also had that one scene where Kuze just randomly crawls up to Kusanagi to recreate the Puppet Master Kusanagi merging scene.
Except they don't even go through with that.
Yeah, they're like, fuck you, main thematic message of the original Ghost in the Shell film. Oshi can go suck a dick.
Yeah, so...
But Oshi liked it.
Somehow.
Well, so did Oba and Obata about this film. They said they really enjoyed it. They recommended it. But,
okay.
To each their own.
Could you imagine if, I know we're kind of jumping ahead here a little bit. Could you imagine if, at the end of the movie, Light's dad just comes up to him and is like, son, I hate to tell you, you're adopted. Your original name was Light Yagami.
Wow. I don't know if that... Funny enough, I don't think that would be nearly as insulting a twist as the twist that was actually in the movie.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what they did in the Ghost in the Shell, if I remember correctly?
That was in Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah. Pretty much, they took a bunch of Asian refugees and tried to, literally turn them into white cyborgs.
They literally whitewashed them.
Wow.
Motoko was... The major in the live-action Ghost in the Shell was literally once a woman called Motoko Kusanagi. And then they literally whitewashed her. They took her brain and put it in a white woman's body and changed her name.
Wow.
To Miria Killigan.
Yeah, that's literally a big twist in the plot in, the third act.
They also took Kuze, a refugee activist, and turned him into a psycho-terrorist.
And literally, they just tried to make him Laughing Man, but they were using the...
Oh no, they didn't try to make him Laughing Man, they tried to make him Puppet Master.
I got them confused, sorry. But yeah, literally tried to make them Puppet Master, but they had him named Kuze, because Kuze had a connection to Kusanagi.
Kuze was a childhood, companion of Kusanagi in Standalone Complex, which is completely unrelated to the original film, but this is, going off topic.
It is, but... God, I should just freaking edit it and release it.
Edit that video.
I will, but back on the subject of Death Note, and why it didn't, insult me as much as Ghost in the Shell is that Ghost in the Shell completely missed, the thematic point of the original, and it was literally trying to do the original, but, super badly. With this film, I felt that they at least did not try and do the exact same thing. Nothing in this movie is exactly the same from the original manga. Not the characters, not any single event plays out the same. There are broad strokes of things that are borrowed from the original manga, like the killing of all the FBI agents. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Ryuk being involved, and, well, even then, Ryuk is a completely different character in this movie.
He wastes his apples this time around.
He does.
Oh, that bothered me so much, too.
He leaves so much apple! What? He's so wasteful! The manga Ryuk would, eat them right down to the core.
Yeah! Have you guys read, the special chapter that released in, 2008 for Death Note?
I don't remember.
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, so in that they explain that the apples that Ryuk brought back are worth, a ton of, value in the Shinigami world. And, you could trade 3 of those apples for another Death Note.
Oh, wow.
And in this live-action film, he, takes, 3 bites out of it, and then he just throws them away.
He barely eats it.
He doesn't even throw them away, he just tosses them on the floor.
Yeah.
Why?
There's so much apple left there, dude. You gotta grape it down to the core. Why are you being...
Ryuk would eat the core, too.
He would eat the core.
And, what happens when Light's dad comes home? Is he just gonna be son, why'd you leave all these apples on the floor? What the fuck?
Because I'm an angsty teenager, Dad. You don't understand.
Never see Light cleaning up the cores at all, so, does Dad not wonder, son, why are you just throwing these goddamn apples on the floor? We have a fucking trash can. You're
also something
teenager.
that really bothered me too with that beginning scene where Ryuk and Light first meet, and Ryuk just makes an entire mess of the detention room for no reason. I want to know what his teacher's gonna how does that scene play out? I wonder
obviously
if
he's getting more detention.
He probably gets another week of detention at best for fucking up the entire classroom. I want to see where that went. I was more interested in that than really most of the movie, honestly.
Yeah, I literally was wondering that. Okay, so he's gonna get more detention, right? The teacher's gonna walk in, and that's gonna be the joke, but they don't pay off on that at all.
They just pan to Light wanting to kill more people.
But that whole introduction scene with Ryuk, that points back to, the change in tone with this movie, because Adam Wingard, he is a horror director. He did, the remake of Blair Witch last year. He's done other horror films in the past. That's, his bread and butter. And you can definitely see he was trying to play up the horror vibe in this film.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's never really scary.
But so, going back to that Ryuk scene, right? They're trying to play up the suspense of Ryuk first appearing. But it doesn't really make any sense. Why does Ryuk, manifest behind a bunch of freaking shelves, all the way across the room from Light, when he could, appear anywhere? He doesn't need to do that. Why does he create, like, swirling whirlwinds in the classroom to make a mess of everything?
Not just to fuck with light, really. That's really about it.
Except he didn't really need to do that because his goal was just to make light use the Death Note. It's just a bunch of, like, fluff that is just supposed to create this atmosphere of, like, ooh, spooky, ghosty stuff is going on.
Well, hey, look, it's scared light.
And the movie tries to use so many jump scares, too.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many moments in the movie where it's just like these really pointless attempts to make a jump scare. Like, it happened in that scene earlier on. We just have, like, this slow panning shot of Light sleeping at his desk, and, like, someone slams down on the desk, and that jolts him up, and that's supposed to be a freaking jump scare. And it's like,
really?
Okay, what? That is so lame. Why are you even bothering with this bullshit?
Wow, if that was supposed to be a jump scare, like, that didn't even make a blip on my radar, honestly.
Yeah, they're really forgettable moments like that, but they're interspersed all throughout this movie. So you can tell this guy is used to making really basic horror fare, reliant on, like, these really cheap gimmicks and stuff that just do not register as all as legitimately creepy or scary at all. And then we can also see that with how over the top the deaths are, like, they're trying to go for this really gory kind of vibe.
It just feels like Final Destination.
Sort of like a horror film, but it's just schlock. It is really just schlock. That is literally my reaction to to the first death that happens, the decapitation, and how needlessly gory and over the top it is just really schlocky. And that makes the movie campy, I guess, but it doesn't, like, make it, like, scary, which I don't know if that was the intention. It doesn't make it over the top in a fun, enjoyable way. It just makes it over the top in a really stupid, eye-rolling way for me. And it just bothers me so much that they go out of the way to be quote-unquote creative with these deaths.
Which
like,
is
to
dumb.
try and, like, engineer some convoluted means of making the deaths really complicated and different instead of just relying on the heart attacks, which I think only happens once in this movie.
Yeah.
Only once does someone actually die of just a heart attack. And that is, like, the one FBI agent. And even then, he can't just, like, fall on the floor because of a heart attack. He has to roll down the goddamn stairs.
Yeah, and then we have the other FBI agents who do that really dumb, like, fucking walk off, like, the skyscraper.
Yeah, they go up, like, this big building and they walk off the roof. Which, in terms of cinematography, and that's one thing I'll give the movie, is that there are some cool-looking scenes in terms of just, like, how they are shot. I think that slow-motion scene where all the FBI agents are walking off the roof and the overhead view we see of that is kind of a cool image. But then they immediately ruin it because when they show the agent falling down and, like, splatting on the ground and we see the gore, it just does not look scary or goofy at all. Like, if they had just cut the black before he hit the ground and we saw him shoot, like, his blood and whatever, that would have been, like, more effective than actually seeing, like, the impact. Like, the big thing that this movie totally forgets about horror is that what you don't see is way scarier than what you do see.
Yep.
And that's especially true of death and gore and all that. The implication is always going to be more scarier than the actual, because your mind will always imagine something far worse and far more frightening. And that's what the true appeal of great horror is. And so, this Adam Wingard guy, I can't pretend to have seen all of his filmography, but just based on, like, this movie and based on, like, what I understand of his previous works, like, his attempts to make Death Note more of a horror piece, something that the original manga really was not. It was a thriller. It just does not work, especially since they don't commit all the way with this. This movie is not, like, scary. It is not, like, have a creepy atmosphere all the way through. There are so many quips and one-liners and dumb little jokes and attempts at humor that just completely rob from any of that angle. And the fact that the gore and is so over the top as schlock also robs from any creepiness or any attempts to take this seriously as horror. So that whole angle completely wasted. And so then what do you have left? This movie, as an adapted interpretation, does it translate the game of wits between light and L? Does it translate the thriller aspect of Death Note, the crime, drama, mystery? No, not really.
Well, hold on, Sid. I want to say something. So, they did translate the cat and mouse aspect. I think they did it a little too literally.
Yeah, it was a little more Tom and Jerry, complete with slapstick.
Yeah. Yeah, L has anger issues with this.
And a weird gun that shoots lasers, I guess, that's in this movie.
Which, by the way, that's something that really bothered me, is that when they get to the scene where L talks to Light, he mentions how he doesn't carry a gun, except apparently he does.
I don't think that's supposed to be his gun. I think there's some gun that's, like, in the... I don't even remember the context of how he gets
I think
gun.
he was showing, like, the place that Watari was last, so I think that might be, like, Watari's gun.
Actually, yeah, that makes sense.
It doesn't explain why it shoots lasers. It doesn't explain why it...
Yeah.
Because he's L, duh.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
make sense. It's not set up at all. And it's not explained with good rationale why he would have something like that.
I don't know.
It's not like he's connected to, like, some super scientific, like, thing. It's not like he has, like, he's working in a laboratory with, like, super geniuses who are developing that kind of technology at all. So, you know, there's a...
So can I just mention one thing about it? Because you were mentioning how this movie has a lot of quips and whatnot. Not to the level of, like, Joss Whedon, but, you know, it's in there. They're still in there. And I gotta say, those were probably actually my favorite part of the movie, except I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with this as a movie, is that it feels like it wants to tackle two different tones, but it doesn't know how to mesh them properly at all. It feels like there are two people trying to make this movie. One of them kind of makes it a more like self-aware kind of comedy kind of thing. The other wants to make an actual horror movie. I actually didn't mind a lot of the quips though. In fact, my all-time favorite scene in this movie that made me laugh for probably 5 minutes straight, it was during when L makes his like press conference to the media and whatnot, trying to get Kira to kill him. I like that bit where Ryuk is just laughing behind, like going like, I'm gonna root for this guy. This guy's awesome. And fucking Light's like, hey, will you shut the fuck up?
Yeah, we laughed at that scene too. That is the one joke in this movie that I legitimately like. So we're on the same page there.
I really felt like how actually annoyed Light was. Like it felt real, and I really appreciated Nat Wolf's delivery on that particular line. I thought that was probably the funniest part in the movie to me personally.
That was a legitimately funny moment. That is like the one good
joke in this entire shitty film.
That's fair.
Yeah, but most of the humor for me just came off as lame and lazy.
That's fair.
I find these types of quips just tiresome because, like, it's trying to be clever, but it's not actually being clever because there's no like layers behind.
But Sid, when they it's funny when they point out how many rules are in the Death Note because Death Note. Am I right?
Yeah, you know that that really speaks to like the difference in priorities. That scene where like where Light is asking Ryuk about the rules, and Ryuk was like, "Oh come on, Light, are we really gonna make this about rules?" Like as if that was the appeal of Death Note, the rules and limitations to the Death Note, and the creative workarounds Light would have to find in order to do what he needed to do in order to outwit L. That tied in the whole of Game of Wits and like the strategizing.
Yeah, that totally didn't happen.
See, that one moment really immediately told me, okay, so the filmmaker's priorities here are not to do this Game of Wits. It's not to, you know, have interesting, like, obstacles set up for Light and L in order to determine each other's identities. It's not going to be like that aspect of the original manga. They're not interested in, like, figuring out a smart thriller story. They really want to focus on over-the-top spectacle and action and, like, really basic kind of stuff in the name of what? Oh, it's barely horror. Like, what even is the tone, the genre piece of this movie? Because it fails at, like, doing any of the genres it's trying to do well.
At times it feels more like a parody of Death Note.
It does, but I don't feel it's self-aware of that. Like, when the 80s music is playing in certain scenes, like the final scene when Light and Mia are falling from the Ferris wheel.
Oh my god, that was the
stupid song is playing.
Whoever chose the music for this movie really needs to...
The music is so on the nose and ill-fitting for the supposed tone of this movie that, yeah, you could mistake this as a parody, but I really did not get any sense of self-awareness
Me neither.
from this film at all.
Yeah.
In terms of how it was written.
Yeah, that was the point in the movie where I was just like, wow, this is actually pretty fucking stupid. it just felt really cliche. It didn't feel like, cause I was talking to a few friends of mine about this too, and I have friends who feel the same way, like, oh, this was obviously going for a comedy, or for a joke, and I'm like, yeah, I don't see that at all. Like, if it's trying to be self-aware, it's doing a pretty shitty job at it, honestly.
I mean, the faces that the actors were making were goofy.
So stupid.
But from the way it was shot, it was not being played up for comedy. It was it was being played seriously as like this tragic, dramatic scene.
Just a waste of a Chicago song.
You can tell that from like the way Mia lands in the flowers and then the close up of her like dead face. Like you were supposed to take that seriously and tragic.
Yep.
And supposed to be
because Mia is such a great character.
I guess just overall, as an adaptation, obviously this movie did not adapt anything from the manga well. As an interpretation, it wastes the premise by not doing anything interesting with the premise. It takes broad ideas from the original manga, like broad things, like the idea of a character called L, the super detective who has these weird quirks. It takes the idea of Light killing a bunch of FBI agents who are tailing him. It takes ideas, but it doesn't do anything new with those ideas. It doesn't do anything like that's that similar to the original with those ideas. But it also, what it adds to the concept is just nothing. It doesn't add anything.
It really doesn't. No.
It takes a piss on every idea we love.
It inserts the killer notebook as like just an excuse to do this really schlocky mix of an emo teen romance and a horror thriller film. And then that becomes an action chase film in the last 30 minutes.
Reason, yeah.
So there's a mix of genres that just doesn't work and no tonal consistency that doesn't work. So I want to go more specifically into the characters because what carries Death Note the original are the characters. Again, the game of wits between Light and L, because they're strong, distinct characters, and each embody a different ideal of justice that they are fighting for. Which, again, is completely absent from this movie that I completely forgot, but is really important to address, is that this idea that Light and L have different ideas of justice, and that's what they're coming to heads with, is completely gone from the movie. Like, this movie is not about that. That's not the motivations. Light's motivation in the movie, the motivation of Light Turner, reason he, like, decides to kill people, it's to freaking get laid.
Yep.
Like, he kills this first guy because, he murdered his mom because we needed, like, some emotional excuse for Light to want to kill
he murdered the bully first.
Let's see. Okay, there we go. See, that's another thing, is that he only murdered that bully because Ryuk forced him to. Because Ryuk told him, hey, write this guy's name down and watch what happens. Like, he doesn't make the choice himself, really. He just kind of goes along with it because this scary demon is telling him to.
Yeah.
Then the first person he kills himself is the murderer of his mother because he's, like, mad at that. And he's like, I gotta kill this guy. I hate this guy. And so, of course, we needed him to have a dead mother so he could want revenge. So we can make this a revenge story, make his actions more quote-unquote noble than the original Light Yagami who kills random people on his own without goading just to see what happens and then justifies a reason to continue doing it. But then Light's reason to continue doing it after those first two people he kills is because he is really attracted to Mia, who is this emo cheerleader who smokes during cheerleading practice.
Because she's cool like
and
that.
is not caught at all by the advisors who should be on the field.
Yeah, that bothered me too.
Ever, which is super okay.
Also, as a fucking fairly recent high school graduate, no one fucking smokes on campuses anymore.
It's all about vaping now.
It's all about vaping and weed.
Yeah, you can tell these people are not with the times at all.
You know what? I'm starting to think Light had a point when he was in the principal's office and trying to bring it up, like, basically everything else, like, the principal could go after. Like, out of everything, no, I'm going to go after this kid who does other people's homework. That's important. I don't care about my students smoking on campus. No, that's not going to raise any red flags at all. It's kind of stupid.
Yeah. that scene was, like, really forced.
It was.
To, like, make Light feel like he was victimized. But Light, from the onset, is not a likable character. Because what is noble about doing other kids' homework for them for cash? And, like, he doesn't, when he sees that kid being bullied, like, he doesn't step in, like, out of his, like, own, like, noble ideals, like, hey, this kid shouldn't be bullied. Like, he's no Jonathan Joestar. He has no chivalrous sense. It's just when Mia steps in, Mia's the girl who steps in and says, hey, don't bully this kid. And then only when the bullies, like, react against Mia, because Light is so horny for Mia, he's, like, sexted. Then he's like, if you beat me up, you're over 18, so if you beat me up, you'll go to jail.
Yeah,
How about that, motherfucker? And, like, in that moment, I wanted to punch Light in the face. Like, is that supposed to make me like Light? Him using that super obnoxious justification? Like, that's not noble. That's not likable. That's just annoying. Like,
yeah.
So can I ask you something, Sid? Because something you brought up on our Manga Mavericks episode was that I really want to know your thoughts on this now that the movie exists and that we've seen it. Because if I remember correctly, and I should remember correctly because I'm the one who edited that, but correct me if I'm wrong, I brought up the idea during the discussion about how I feel like the biggest way, I guess, the movie could go wrong is if the people behind the movie decide to make Light a sympathetic character. And as soon as I said that, if I remember correctly, you were kind of for it, but, like, you know, if they did it in a specific way. So how do you feel about that idea now that you've seen it executed?
well, they executed it in the wrong way.
Exactly.
Because Light wasn't sympathetic at all. There's no reason for me to like the character of Light
But his
Turner.
mom's dead. Don't you feel sorry for him?
I don't automatically feel sorry for him. I'm on the side of the principal in that scene where the principal was saying, you know, most people would look at you, Light Turner, and see that your mom's dead and give some sympathy for you, but you gotta own up to what you're doing here. And that's, like, my attitude, because, like, Light is just not admirable at all in terms of his motivations, in terms of what he does in the story.
He's kind of a puppet.
His entire attitude, he's just not appealing. Like, he's this whiny, he's this cowardly character. And he's not, like, despicable in, like, a really, like, interesting way. He's just a really obnoxious, lame character in, like, the most basic ways.
Yeah.
Like, he's this horny, introverted outcast. He's literally freaking the main character of Cross Account. This movie is Death Note with freaking the main character of Cross Account replacing Light.
Oh,
and
no.
I thought of that as soon as I watched the movie and saw Light, and I was like, oh my god, this guy is Date, or whatever that goddamn character's name is.
I think Date's like the name of the creator.
Oh, who cares? I don't even want to bother remembering that guy's name. But the thing is...
But Cross Account's going to be the greatest show to jump success in. It's way better than Shoot On.
Feeler, please don't.
Don't derail this right now. I don't want to have to interrupt this podcast to beat you up.
I don't want Sid to have another heart attack. Like, please don't.
I wish someone would write my name down the dead note if Cross Account became a huge success.
Just watch it a year from now. Cross Account's going to be on the cover of Jump again every week.
No. And it's going to get an anime, too.
Guys, let's not make this about stupid Cross Account. I want to talk about how terrible Light Turner as a character is, because he does not have agency to begin with, and when he starts killing people, when he does finally kill a person, it's for, like, this reason of vengeance, which I guess is supposed to be justifiable in the context. At least the movie tries to present it as justifiable righteousness, because even his dad is like, well, karma's a bitch. He got what he deserved. That was just, yeah. So you're like, I guess you're supposed to be on Light's side with that, but he still murdered a person, but, like, he doesn't feel guilt about that at all. Ever. He doesn't feel guilt about murdering any people. And the scenes of Light and Mia killing people, they're interspersed with them making out and having sex. Like, they're literally getting
thing.
off to killing people. They're sociopaths. I don't know how you are supposed to empathize and sympathize with these characters. Because at least when, like, Yagami was murdering people, he was treating it seriously as, like, a duty. He was, like, writing down as many names as he can. He thought he was, like, it was his job. Like, he was fully absorbed that this was, like, a self-righteous thing in his own mind. And in the manga, like, we can get that he's actually takes this seriously. But in the film, like Turner and Mia, they just get off on the power and the ability to kill people. Like, they don't have any, like, actual idea of justice or the idea that they want to make the world a better place. Like, the movie tries to shoehorn, like, some dialogue where Mia's like, hey, like, I don't think you're crazy enough. We could really change the world. Yeah. But, like, you can tell that Mia is just full of it. She just really wants to kill people because she wants to kill just innocent people, obviously, later on, like Light's dad and the FBI agents she kills.
You know one thing this film does better than the manga? It managed to create a worse female character than the manga.
That's one thing it does better?
I don't fucking know. Okay.
No, it's surprising that it actually makes a worse character than Misa. Misa had really wrong reasons for wanting to kill people in terms of her idolization of Light and, like, her willingness to kill any girl who got close to Light. But at least there was humor to her. At least there was, like, this charm. She had kind of this brightness that gave some levity to the series alongside Matsuda. So she had a good purpose in that light, even though, the series doesn't treat her the best. But with Mia as a character, she is like, so the thing with how they approached Light and Mia in this film is that they took Light Yagami as a character, and this is like the writer's own words, that this is like intentional, that they took Light Yagami's personality traits and they split it between Light Turner and Mia. So Mia inherited like Light's conniving, manipulative nature.
Oh, wow.
And then so Light Turner inherited like, I guess, this moral grounding of Light's character.
Guess.
Why not do it the other way?
The writer kind of misinterpreted Light Yagami if he really saw much of a moral grounding to his character.
I mean, this is the guy who wrote the Fantastic Four reboot.
Yeah, I should point out that Jeremy Slater, the writer of this movie, wrote Fan Four Stick.
Jesus Christ!
We remember that on Twitter, like, he was saying, they didn't use everything I wrote in the Fan Four Stick. It's not my fault, guys. But, he was responsible for that
Jesus.
script. And this film also shows that, okay, his writing is probably not that great. The original Fan Four Stick draft he written was probably not going to be great if this is, like, him unfiltered.
Fox probably made it better.
That's really interesting, though, because, like, it really... See, now that you said that, like, I guess I'm not surprised, like, because it really felt like throughout the entire movie, I couldn't help but think, why isn't Mia the main character? Like, she feels more like Light than Light does. It's really off-putting.
Yeah, that was an intentional choice on the writer's part to split up their personality traits. It could have been interesting if they had done it well, but the problem is, because Light and Mia are such shallow and uninteresting characters, it just doesn't work. And again, that's the big problem with these characters, is that they are really shallow in their motivations. They are horny, emo teenagers that are like, everyone in this world sucks, but we're great and we should kill all the people who are making this world suck for us. Like, they are so childish. And Light Yagami was childish, but at least he was smart in how he did things. But
Mia's a fucking idiot.
Light and Mia are really
I feel like
stupid.
Light's the bigger idiot. Like, God, Light is such a fucking dumbass. Like, I'm gonna take out the Death Note while I'm in the bleachers at my gym. Hopefully nobody will see it. Like, why do you have it out in public? Why would you have that on you at school? Leave that shit at home, fucking idiot.
And why would you tell this girl you barely know about the Death Note and then show her you can kill people? Oh, right, it's because you're horny and you want to bang her and you think that showing her that you can kill people will make you look super hot.
It's really cool, man.
Attractive.
Yeah. All the cool people kill people. So at first I thought Light was the biggest idiot in this film, but by the end of the film, I kind of changed that to Mia, because Mia fucks up the entire plan.
Yeah, Mia steals the page with Watery's name on it, so Watery dies when they could have found out Elle's identity, and it's all because Mia wants to Death Note for herself.
Which she should have, if she wanted to
power hungry.
If she wanted to cuck Light, she could have done it after they killed Elle.
She also didn't realize that, like, Light could have just screwed her over easily because he has the Death Note. Like, there's nothing stopping him from writing her name down, which is what happens and which is why she dies. So she really screws up.
Yeah, so she just fucked them both over for no reason.
Also, he goes through this really convoluted plan that ends with his page of the Death Note with his name written on it burned. He could have done that at any time.
And I hate how the movie tries to present it as this really clever thing.
Because it's
not really contrived. Like,
it's
the
stupid.
biggest... Okay, so how the movie uses the Death Note is that it overuses, like, this mind control aspect.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no limitations to the mind control in this movie. They can make other people just do anything over, like, I mean, it's only supposed to be 2 days that they can do it, as opposed to, like, in the manga.
23 days.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So there are no limitations into what they can do. Like, Ryuk says at some point that, oh, you can't do things that are physically impossible, but they might as well have done things that are physically impossible for, like, how much implausible detail is written out for all of these deaths and the circumstances, especially in that last big scheme of Light's to kill Mia off and, like, absolve himself of being Kira. It's not clever in the same way that, like, Light schemes in the original manga were. Because that actually was, like, stuff that, when you think about it and read it, you're like, oh, that's really clever. That was really playing the rules, and it was right there in front of us the whole time, but we just didn't see it. But here, you don't get enough information for it to be really an interesting mystery to how Light's gonna get out of it. And it's just, obscured in so much over-the-top bullshit that it's like, okay, really? That was the point of all that? That was supposed to be all planned out, really? Coincidentally, like, the Ferris wheel was gonna explode and drop Mia into the sea, and then just gonna happen to be a burn barrel there? And, like, they're so vague about, like, certain stuff like that, certain specific things, like, oh, the page of the notebook with Light's name on it is gonna burn up. Okay, I guess that's gonna happen at the freaking amusement park. Just gonna be a random burn barrel for it to fly into.
That's a little too specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, they really abuse the rules of the Death Note in really uninteresting and, like, hacky ways.
Yeah.
Just to, like, move the plot forward and get the characters where they need to be and, like, pull off this super big twist that is like, whatever. Okay.
And that's kind of going to the bigger issues that they never really give you a good baseline for the rules. They just joke about, oh, there's so many rules. And then they just really only focus on, okay, mind control, and you can write your name down and, like, kill people.
Yeah, and you can burn one page of the notebook to prevent.
Which just sounds overly convenient.
Yeah.
And that's not in the manga at all. So
yeah.
Like invented rule. And also, the whole reason, like, the big gambits in the manga worked is because, like, you had two smart people, like, trying to outwit each other and figure out each other's game. That's completely absent in this film, because in their first meeting, Light tells Elle that, yeah, he's Kira. He doesn't outright say, I'm Kira, but he basically confirms to Elle that, yeah, he's Kira. And what are you gonna do about it? So, that whole thing goes down the drain.
Yeah.
So, when you get to that, like, final, like, big moment, that scene in the film where Light's gonna do his gambit and stuff, like, that's not what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about, okay, how is he gonna outwit Elle? You're just looking at, okay, so they're on this Ferris wheel, and, I guess one of them is gonna die at the very least. It looks like it's gonna be Mia, because that's gonna be the more obvious.
Yeah.
So, it's not very smartly written, like the original manga, in terms of the twists and turns. Characters are not very good at all.
Well, can we talk about Elle?
Oh god, Elle in this film.
Can I just say real quick, because I feel like you guys are going to have way more negative things to say than I will, but I will say, I really thought throughout the first, like, hour of the movie, I was actually pretty confident in how they would portray Elle. Like, because the more I spent time with him, the more I saw him on screen, I should say, with the exception of them, like, really driving home, like, how much he likes sweets, which I felt like was a little excessive. But outside of that, I actually really didn't mind this portrayal of L. Like, it really felt like the character to me. Like, I wanted to watch more of him. And L, up to a certain point, I think is the best part of the movie. And it's around the point where L meets Light, and, you know, they start having their conversation, and L starts having this, like, outburst. There's, like, this scene in public because he gets so, like, passionate about their conversation. Really kind of, like, if that were the only outburst L has in the movie, I wouldn't mind it as much. And I get that, yeah, like, Light uses Watari to try to find L's real name, and Watari ends up dying. And I can kind of understand in this movie, yeah, that would upset L, and they did kind of set up Watari as, like, the father figure of L, and I feel like that maybe could have been interesting. An interesting aspect of L and his character to explore. I feel like you can mine that for good stuff, I think. But, like, the emotional outburst that L has in, like, the last 40 minutes of the movie, like, it really took me out of the movie. I was just like, because he gets to this point where, like, Watari dies, he gets out his fucking laser gun, steals a police car, and starts chasing Light, and all I'm thinking is, like, okay, L was not without emotion in the manga. Like, I'm kind of the opinion that, like, I like the characters in Death Note, but there are very few of them that don't feel like just kind of walking ideals. In my opinion, that's just me personally. L, I felt like at least had enough of a personality. He felt human to me. So L was this genius, but he didn't let his emotions overcloud his judgment. He would have been upset at first, but he would have found a way to fuck Light over and rub it in his face, because that's just his character. I felt like L emoted too much. And I really felt like he acted way more recklessly than I feel like his actual character would have. And in that, like, he even gets to the point where, like, near the end of the movie, he has the opportunity to, like, write down Light's name in the Death Note, and, oh, he can't do it, which, to be fair, I feel like there's a wasted opportunity in there too, with some kind of parallel you could have drawn there between how easy it was for Light to write down his parents' assailant in the Death Note, whereas L had a hard time, basically couldn't bring himself to do it. I feel like if this movie were written smarter, I feel like you could explore the parallels of their character using those two scenes, but unfortunately, this movie isn't smart enough to really explore their characters deeply enough. But basically, the point I'm getting to is that the thing I was disappointed in most was that I really enjoyed L's portrayal, and I really thought they actually kind of stuck to what his character was about up until the last 40 minutes of the movie, and then his character just falls apart. Honestly, I thought that was the most disappointing thing about this adaptation.
Yeah, I liked L's earlier scenes. Like, the actor, Lakeith Stanfield, did a really good job capturing, like, the mannerisms of this, like, awkward, kind of antisocial recluse. So there were some good, like, moments in there with him early on, but, like, as soon as, like, Watari, like, gets mind-controlled and disappears, and he becomes really emotional and irrational, that's where, like, the character completely lost.
He just stops being L.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And, like, I find the whole ending scene where L finds, like, that page of the Death Note, it teases, oh, is he going to write the name down? I found that insulting. Like, commit one way or the other. Like, that is just, like, this open ending that is just like, okay, we might get a sequel, so we don't want to, like, definitively kill off one of these characters, but if we don't get a sequel, we should have, like, a teaser. Oh, maybe this is how it ends.
You know, regardless of how bad this film was going to be, the one thing I was looking forward to is seeing Light eat it at the end. Yeah. And they don't even give me that.
I was really hoping for that, too.
The satisfaction of Light being defeated. He comes out of this, like, okay, I mean, maybe L will write his name down. I don't know. That's still not that satisfying. Because he never gets truly punished for all the horrible things he does. And for being the horrible person that he is. The movie, like, is sympathetic to Light. The movie, like, portrays Light as in the right. It never raises a question of, is Light the bad guy? At all. It shows me as the bad guy. Never Light.
Yeah. Going back a bit to, like, Light controlling Watari.
Oh yeah, that's really stupid. Like, I guess you don't need the last name anymore?
Yeah,
or the fact that Watari isn't even his actual name.
Yeah. Like, in the manga...
Maybe in this it's his actual name, but, like, in the manga, it was not his name. It was a pseudonym.
Yeah. And, like, Rem found it out when, like Watari was trying to snipe her. And that's the only reason she knew it. But in this, apparently you can just use a pseudonym. Which then brings up the question, couldn't the moment that L showed his face to Light, couldn't Light have just written his name down in the notebook?
Unless L was a pseudonym, they don't give us a clear answer.
Yes, but if he only needs Watchery, then...
But again, I think in this movie, Watchery was supposed to be his actual name.
Yeah, but he doesn't know the last name.
Yeah, but again, L wouldn't be his actual first name.
Okay,
so
yeah,
why he
that's
didn't
a
do
good
that with
point.
L.
Yeah.
That's what.
Still, it's dumb.
Yeah, it is really dumb. It's just a big oversight in terms of, like, logic.
That was the point in the movie where they come up with the idea to control Watari. That was when the movie just kept, like, just going downhill for me personally.
And the thing
Yeah,
is,
that
like-
was, like, the most absurd use of the mind control, because Watari, like, goes through all this, like, stunt and, like, acts as, like, his own, like, independent agent, and it's, like, talking to Light in this, like, hypnotic state, and this is, like, when Light asked Naomi Misora, when she was being mind controlled, like, hey, you can call my dad now, do you want to do it? And Naomi was like, I am not focused on that anymore. And so, like, I guess they took that idea from, like, that one scene in the manga and expanded it into this whole subplot, but it just felt so forced, and it felt so, like, I guess he's like this hypnotized robot.
Yeah.
And I was, like, expecting, I was holding out hope that, okay, maybe this is all just a scheme on L's part. Maybe
Yeah.
L is having Watari play along with this scheme so that he can uncover more information and expose Light, but no, that's not what they go
God,
with.
that would have been so good.
Watari's actually being mind controlled, and he actually almost tells Light L's real name, but then of course he gets shot because
Yeah, I was so fucking pissed at the scene where Watchery gets controlled, and then you're like, hey, this must be Watchery trying to, like, fool Light, and then it just keeps going and going, and
you were making a fit about it. I was like, okay, actually, let's wait and see where they go with this. This might be a gambit by Al, but nope, I was proven wrong. I was proven to be a fool. I was too trusting of this goddamn movie that did not deserve my trust, and I should have realized it. I was tricked again. I was tricked again.
What was the last thing that tricked you?
Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, okay. How did that trick you, though? We knew it was going to be bad from the start.
I'm just too optimistic about movies, V-Lord.
Look, V-Lord, like, life hasn't beaten the shit out of Sid just yet. Like, give it a couple years.
It has. It has beaten the shit out of me, but when it comes to my entertainment,
He likes to be a bit more optimistic.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, the only other major characters in this movie are James Turner, Light's dad, who is like, whatever, he's a cop, cares about his son, I guess. I don't know.
So I do want to talk a little bit about Light's dad, because I felt like at least, again, up until the very end of the movie, they portrayed him, I think, well enough, because, as much, like, I went on Manga Mavericks about how much I really like Soichiro Yagami. I really felt like he was one of the best characters in the series, but, like, he's kind of an example of what I was saying earlier, that as much as I like the characters in Death Note, a lot of them are walking ideals, and Soichiro Yagami was, like, the most basic example of that, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
Because outside of his ideals of justice and as a cop or whatever, and his love for his family and his son or whatnot, he's not really a character in a sense. Or at least there's not a ton of substance to him when you really think about it.
I would disagree about Soichiro. I think that there is a whole lot of depth to him in terms of, like, how he cares about his family, the lengths he's willing to go to, because he's such a good person and wants to solve this case. But we talked a lot about Soichiro, and I think I just said my piece on him.
That's fair. All I'm saying is I think he's a simple enough character that, like, it's really hard to fuck him up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know what? I even think that through some of the dialogue, I felt like, I don't know, you guys might disagree with me on this, and that's totally fine, but I felt like his dialogue made him feel more like a person. In a way. It made him feel more like a real character in a way.
He did feel like more like an actual human being, but
to me, yes.
It just wasn't enough with him, and not enough scenes like showing like the positive bond between him and Light for me to really get invested.
He just doesn't do much in this movie,
doesn't.
I feel.
Yeah, and as like Soichiro being killed off was a threat the entire manga, but I never really felt like James Turner was in danger.
No.
Like, I never felt like they were he could actually get killed off.
But I do want to say, the thing that really gets me about the end of the movie is that he ends up figuring out that his son is Kira. And it just kind of bothers me, like, the difference in characters here, because in the manga, we talked about this on Manga Mavericks too, about how Soichiro would literally kill himself if his son turned out to be Kira. He was a man who was willing to take responsibility for his family and his son if the worst turned out to be true. In this version, he figures out that Light is Kira, but, like, I think he takes it way too well, and I feel like that's kind of insulting.
Yeah.
That was just the final nail in the coffin for me, honestly. Like, yeah, fuck this movie.
Yeah, it serves to highlight how underdeveloped his character was, because, it didn't infuriate me because he wasn't Soichiro Yagami. He wasn't the same character at all in terms of his characterization. Like, Soichiro Yagami is never going to say,
generic
Karma
cop.
is a bitch, you know? So, James Turner, he was like, okay.
He was a generic cop.
He was a generic cop. Like, he was a renegade who, like, is going to bring this case to the light. But I guess in the end, like, I don't know what he decides to do. Like,
I don't know.
It's just another layer to the ambiguity of the ending, I guess, that they wanted to put. Like, even if L doesn't kill Light, is his dad gonna turn him in? We don't know. Like, he asked Light, what side are you on? Are you the better evil? Are you the worse evil? What are you? Like, that's the one moment where the movie ever tries to posit that what Light was doing was bad. It's at the final scene. But for the entire movie, you portrayed him as the victim, as the guy who's getting screwed by everyone else.
Bit too little, too late.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the cops, I want to bring up a really interesting difference between the movie and the source material that really kind of, I don't want to say blew my mind, but I really thought was interesting. I just find it kind of interesting how in the movie, James does bring up this point about how at least most cops seem to kind of favor the existence of Kira because it makes their job capturing criminals easier. Whereas in the manga, this is kind of a really interesting cultural difference kind of thing, is that, a lot of the cops in the original series, like, they weren't really all for Kira. And I find that difference in attitude with both of these iterations culturally very interesting.
Yeah, here in the US, like, we do advocate the death penalty, so harsh crimes, we believe people should be put to death. So it makes sense, like, for this cultural context, like, most of the cops would be on board with the guy Kokira. Well, I thought it was a little ridiculous that all of them but James were on board. James was the only one who was like, hey, who is this Kira guy? Why does he get to decide who lives or dies? Is that right? Like, it was a little ridiculous to me that there was no one else besides him in his police department that had his perspective. But at least the movie did have some awareness there that there were cultural differences that they could play into effect in terms of making this movie different from the original. Mm-hmm. But they didn't go all the way with any of these ideas.
No, they didn't.
The one part that annoys me is that, like, near the end of the film where, like, L is, like, right about to shoot Light, and then, like, that, like, chef guy, like, whacks L on the head to save Light because he learns that he's Kira. And, like, they imply that, this guy, like, looks up to Kira.
Yeah.
But we don't really see much in the movie, like, general civilians, like, advocating for Kira.
We see that in the montage scene. Like, there's this cult that's worshipping Kira. There's people who are, like, raising Kira on the news worldwide. But that's, like, all in that montage. So if you, like, completely glossed over that, if you took that montage out, then you wouldn't, like, get that at all, because that doesn't play a part anywhere else in the movie.
They just don't go into it.
And again, that whole scene with the freaking, like, Kira supporter knocking out L and saving Light, that's another huge, like, thing that, like, tries to portray Light's actions as positive, him as sympathetic and righteous, which is, like, totally off base.
And then that sappy music that plays, like, as he's running towards the amusement park, just...
Oh, that was so bad.
Again,
God, that's terrible.
Like this, the way they portray Light and what he's doing is just, it really disturbs me that, like, apparently the people who were making this film were thinking like that, he is the good guy. And I know, like I said before, that I wouldn't mind an interpretation where Light was more sympathetic, but
they did a shitty job.
It's my own moral... they did a shitty job with it, and maybe it's my own moral philosophy that, like, I think killing people is wrong and stuff, but there's just no ambiguity to Light, really. In that final scene, that final line from Light's dad tries to bring that up, but no, in the entire movie, Light is portrayed as the victim and as the protagonist, and you're supposed to be sympathetic and root for him to get out of this alive. And I couldn't buy into that because Light is such an unlikable protagonist that I didn't want to root for.
He's
I wanted
a little
to see
bitch.
him fail because he's a little bitch.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the only character who I thought was actually any good in this movie was Ryuk. William Dafoe did a fantastic performance with him. Ryuk was really creepy and, like, had a lot of presence. He was very fun. He was not like the original Ryuk, because in this movie, he's more like a devil character. He's more, like, active and, like, goading Light and Mia into killing people and making them kill people, whereas in the original manga, Ryuk was like, he just wanted to see, okay, if a human got a Death Note, what would they do with it? Let's see if it'd be interesting. In this movie, he actually has an agenda. He wants to get the Death Note owners to actively kill people. We don't know why, really. I mean, I guess that's a big problem in the movie. Is I guess you're supposed to assume that Ryuk is this big, scary demon motherfucker. So of course he wants you to kill people
in Light's
and
words,
like go sell your soul into darkness and stuff. He can't just be like this quirky, like kind of goofy comic relief character that can be intimidating when it counts, but is mostly just makes quips about wanting to play Super Mario or
Mario
eats
Golf.
apples.
It's Mario Golf.
Mario Golf, yeah.
A real man's game.
Yeah. Yeah, but there were some good moments with Ryuk. I think my favorite line where it's like, humans are interesting. I mean, the twist itself with L trying to maybe write Light's name down, I think that's insulting. But Ryuk saying that line, humans are interesting, laughing to himself because he knows something Light doesn't. That, in terms of just Ryuk's part in that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. My other, like, favorite moment with Ryuk is, like, when, like, Light is angry at him because he thinks that Ryuk wrote the FBI agent's names down. And he's like, you know, if you don't shape up and obey me, I'm gonna write your name down. And Ryuk is just, like, laughing, and he's like, you know, there's 4 letters in my name, but people have only ever gotten down 2.
Yeah, basically he's like, yeah, why don't you fucking try, bitch? Like, come on.
Yeah, that was a great moment. That was kind of
I was
like
rooting for Ryuk.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to root for him more, but we don't get a concrete sense of his motivations, and he was just more like this devil character, like, playing in the sidelines.
Like, Ryuk kind of makes it sound like that the passing of the Death Note from owner to owner is like this, like, ritualistic thing that's been happening since, like, the beginning of time or some shit.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what they were implying, but it was just kind of weird to me.
Yeah. It's not as interesting as, like, Ryuk's original motivation in the manga, is that he just was bored and wanted to see what would happen if a human got the Death Note. And this is like, oh, I actually want you to kill people. If you're not up to it, I'll just find me someone else to kill people. But we don't ever get a sense that what is actually fun or interesting to him about that, other than the fact that, oh, he looks like a devilish character.
It's like it's his job
of course
or
the devil
something.
will want you to do bad things and lead you astray. Because he's a scary devil monster.
I enjoy, like, Defoe's actual performance as Ryuk, but, like, I don't know, like, he has, like, quite a few, like, good lines and stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, for the fact that they're trying to make it menacing, I don't think his design is very good.
I actually thought the CG design for Ryuk was pretty good.
I don't know, it looks a bit, like, too wacky.
Really?
Well, it's Ryuk.
Yeah, I know, but in the manga, that works, because, like, he's not necessarily supposed to be menacing all the time in the manga, but for what they were going for here, it just kind of feels weird.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, it would have been better, honestly, if they had just, like, kept him in the shadows all the time and made him seem more like just this, like, shadowy figure.
Well, in terms of an aesthetic choice, Sam Leach made a good tweet yesterday of, like, he always imagined CG Ryuk to, like, kind of be this kind of ink wash aesthetic that sort of looked like the manga version at times.
Yeah.
Kind of like in certain scenes that show Ryuk heavily stylized. And I do like that idea. That would have been interesting if they had went with that.
That would have been cool, and I think that would have worked a lot better for what they were going for in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that, though, like, Ryuk honestly just doesn't do much in this film.
Yeah, it's disappointing because, again, William Dafoe's Ryuk is, like, the most entertaining part of the movie when he's on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Even if his actual character is not well-defined.
You know.
But, yeah.
This film.
Again, Unlike Ghost in the Shell, I did not finish watching this and feel like completely soul crushed and like broken inside. I wasn't miserable after I finished the film. I was just like, did we really just watch that? Like, half an hour later, I was like, did we actually just watch that? Because I already feel like that was just such a nothing experience. I have no seething rage for the live-action Death Note movie, but it is such a waste of potential. Waste of some, good talent. Nat Wolff, he did not turn into good performances, like Turner rather, but, he's not terrible an actor, I don't think. I mean, I honestly don't have that much experience with him, but I think he probably could have done, like, maybe some character that could have been good.
I think a lot of it just comes down to bad directing and bad writing. If those aren't good, like, the actors themselves are gonna have a hard time performing.
It didn't really know what it wanted to be, or it had a really juvenile idea of what made Death Note fun, and went with that without really understanding what really drew people to Death Note. And, yeah, it just did not have good talent behind it creatively. I mean, cinematography, I do think this movie looks pretty good. The cinematographer of this movie was the same cinematographer of Speed Racer, actually.
Oh.
He also did the Star Wars prequels, which, those movies, like, weren't good, but, like, they looked okay for the most part.
Aside from, I guess, episode 1 looks pretty ugly now.
Yeah. Well, but I think that just wraps up our thoughts. At the end of the day, we were very disappointed with this movie, but this is such a also forgettable movie that it doesn't leave us like with a seething hatred for it. It just leaves us disappointed of what, it could have been easily a better movie if they just had stuck to a more focused direction, like played it up as horror or as comedy, as actually been self-aware, put a little more effort into the script and not relied on like cheap conveniences and the mind control thing. Yeah. That's really sum it up.
Well, can I ask you guys this? I feel like I know the answer to this, but do you feel like we've progressed at all as far as Hollywood live-action adaptations of anime go with this film at all? Because I legitimately thought there were good things about this movie, but I also, like, the more I talk about it, the more I'm starting to feel like the bad really outweighs the good here.
Yeah, I don't think this was a step forward at all. I mean,
really,
even Ghost in the Shell, you could say there was some visual things that were decent in it.
Yeah.
So if that was all this movie had going for it, is that like at least looked pretty good at parts, but the actual script, the interpretation, taking the source material and just not understanding it, nothing like that is improved upon from the likes of Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yeah, like, the last genuine step forward we've ever had in Hollywood, like, adaptions of, like, Japanese material was Edge of Tomorrow.
Well,
Really?
Speed Racer was, like, a great attempt at a live-action anime,
That is true.
That was a really stylish, great vision behind it, but we have not, like, come close to that in 10 years since
Yeah.
I hear so many people praise that movie now. Like, I'm really gonna have to watch that really soon.
Yeah,
It is
same.
really fun.
I don't know. Like, personally, I feel the same way. I didn't come out of this hating it either, but, like, like, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched this movie at all, I mean, we've already talked a lot about it, so you probably don't want to watch it, but I mean, like, if you still do, I didn't hate it all the way through, as much as I did hate some parts, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to recommend this movie to fans of Death Note or not. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to be like, yeah, you should totally go watch this new thing on Netflix, it's pretty cool. Like, I'm kind of in the middle with the movie, honestly. I don't hate it, I don't really love it either.
If you're forced to choose between this movie and the Ghost in the Shell movie, go with this movie.
Especially if you already have Netflix.
Yeah.
I can't recommend this movie at all, because if you're not a fan of Death Note, if you don't know anything about Death Note, this movie will not make you interested in Death Note.
This will be a terrible first
And you wouldn't
impression.
care about anything that's going on, you'll probably just stop watching it, because the only reason I could watch through this whole thing was because I was doing a podcast about it.
Same.
And because, I had, like, some stake in this, because I was invested in the original source material. So I wanted to see it all the way through to see how they're gonna handle this, where they're gonna go with it. And I was, of course, disappointed. So if you're a fan, you're not gonna enjoy this. If you're not a fan, it's not gonna be appealing to you. this is not a universal, of course. Some people did find enjoyment in this movie, but just generally, I don't think it was very worthwhile.
Generally, you're gonna have a bad time.
But at least it was relatively innocent. Oh, wait a minute! I just remembered about the scene that really, really pissed me off.
Oh, no.
The freaking explanation about why, adopts the name Kira, why he comes up with the name. Because Kira apparently means, in some other languages. But no, the real, reason, the reason that he convinces Mia to go with the name is that apparently Kira sorta means killer in Japanese.
Which is
so if they're gonna be looking for Kira, they're looking on the wrong continent, and that's not true. Kira does not mean killer in Japanese at all. It's a freaking transliteration of the English word killer, and Kira actually means, shining or glittering. That's what the actual word means. And Kira is... why would they just be looking on Japan in the first place? Because Kira is a common Japanese name, and there's Japanese people in America. The death started in America. Why would they be looking in Japan when most of the people dying have not been in Japan? That's not where the deaths originally started from. The logic just makes no sense. It's infuriating. It is insulting because they freaking get the fucking meaning of a word wrong, and they're expecting you to buy it. As if we can't just easily look it up on the internet and confirm for ourselves. You insult the audience's intelligence. Freaking fuck you, Adam Wingard and
But
Jeremy
Sid,
Slater. Fuck anyone.
He said it
who
sort
thought the
of
scene
means
was a good
killer in
idea.
Japanese. He said sort
Yes,
of.
because shining means killer.
Yes, he
No.
said sort of, so he obviously wasn't completely right. Come on, Sid, give him a break.
I mean, if we think about The Shining, the film has a lot of killing, so therefore...
God damn it. No, there's no justification for that kind of bullshit at all. Screw this movie. It was terrible. We need a palate cleanser. Let's talk about the original Death Note. We got some questions about the original Death Note from my friend Gunsword Fist over on Animation Revelation. He has a few questions for us. Let's just, kind of wind down, decompress, kind of answering these. And sort of, address some of these on our discussion. But we can just go over it again in case people haven't gotten around to that yet. So, Gunsword Fist, first question is, does anyone else hate Misa? And, of course, my response is, I didn't hate Misa. Upon rereading it, I found that she was a lot more likable than I originally had thought, and I am okay with her. I'm just disappointed about how she was used ultimately.
Yeah, I like Misa, and I actually think she's pretty useful, especially in the Yotsuba arc. But, near the end, she feels very shafted, but there was never a point where I actually hated her. If anything, I felt sorry for her at times, because she's kind of just being used by Light the entire time.
I don't dislike Misa as much as I used to, but I don't generally think she's a great character either.
His second question is, favorite things about the Nier arc and the Yotsuba arc?
That's a tough one.
Nier arc?
No, the ending is obvious.
Yeah, that was easily the best part of that entire arc, honestly.
I mean, aside from that, I guess the best part for me would be the whole part where it's pretty much Mello has a Death Note, and then Light is, facing off against Mello.
Yeah, those first two volumes.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And it's just Mello, it's good.
Yotsuba arc, I'd say my favorite part was near the end, where everyone's coming together to capture Higuchi.
Mm-hmm.
And, even, the old, cops that left the Kira task force come back, and they're, helping out, and they're,
That's a good moment, yeah.
That was really
just everyone working together at the end. It's so cool.
Yeah, I also like Matsuda sneaking into the Yotsuba group organization and just spying around. That was a good character moment.
Yeah, that was cool.
Man, I was gonna say that too. Actually, Misa does a neat thing where she gets Higuchi to confess to him being Kira. I actually thought that was kind of neat for her character.
Yeah.
Again, Misa has some really good moments in that arc.
Yeah, Misa's really proactive in the Yotsuba arc, which makes me just really sad that she just stops being useful in the Nier arc.
I don't think I definitively said this in our podcast, but I do think the Yotsuba arc is probably my favorite part of Death Note, because I think it just makes the best use of all the characters, and it's really interesting to see Light and L working together.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I could see that.
It really shows that the series didn't need to solely depend on it being kind of a mind conflict between L and Light. It can go in other directions. We can have other people have the Death Note and still make this series interesting.
Yeah, Yotsuba was a good arc, and I wish, like, the rest of the series could have been more like that.
Yeah.
Moving on, his next question is, does anyone else think that Naomi Misora should have a much bigger role in the series? And yeah, I definitely agree. I ranted about this a lot on our Death Note discussion, but I thought she was completely wasted. And
yeah, after listening to what you had to say, Sid, I'm in full agreement that even though it obviously wasn't Oba's intention to have Misora play a more active role in the series, like, she was basically another obstacle for Light to get over. I feel like out of all the female characters in Death Note, she had probably the most potential to be the most useful and the most, really the most awesome, honestly.
Yeah, and it's just so frustrating that she's
worked with L
no
before.
Impact
like,
on the story. Nothing that she does affects how anything else turns out.
Especially seems like before, like, Light makes her commit suicide, it seems like they're hyping her up to be like this kind of right-hand man to L, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate.
I definitely think she's also a wasted character.
That's true.
So, what is the dumbest thing Light has ever done in the series?
Now, if this were asking what's the dumbest thing Light Turner does, we'd have plenty of answers, but, oh man, I don't know. I feel like Light was pretty good about covering his ass for most of the series, honestly.
Like, Light was never really being dumb. Like, even when, by his downfall, it's not really completely his fault. At the end, it's Mikami's fault.
Oh, you know what?
Really kind of...
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I actually forgot to mention this on the podcast, too. Something that really one of the few things about Death Note that actually bothers me upon rereading the, it's during the portion where all of the Yagami family is being surveillanced by L during the time where he's thinks, oh yeah, Light is obviously Kira. Rewatching the scene where Light has everything set up to where he has a mini television set inside of a bag of potato chips in a position in his room where, like, I guess in a blind spot where the cameras in his room won't catch it. Like, I don't know, like, it's just... How was that TV small enough to fit inside of a bag of potato chips? Also, when did he have the time to put that TV in the potato chips?
I think he went to, like, a convenience store beforehand, and then he somehow resealed the bag with the camera inside.
I guess that would be the only way that scene makes sense. Because, like, when you really reread that scene again, you have no frame of reference as to, like, when he sets this all up.
Like, I really wish that at least, like, before they went into the, like, house, they had, like, explained, like, how he's gonna reseal this bag, because, like, that's the only part I kind of don't know how he did.
I think that might be one of the dumbest things he did, because he spent, like, a ridiculous amount of money, like 50,000 yen on that small portable TV. Yeah. And then he had to throw it out the next day.
Yeah, but it was a good plan, because Elle didn't figure it out at all.
I guess.
Yeah. Inevitable.
I mean... Yeah.
I guess, like, in terms of, like, other, like, dumb things he's done, I guess it's underestimating Nier.
Yeah.
Mainly because, like, he gets into the same mentality the readers get into about Nier just being a dollar store L.
Yeah, and he kind of gloats in front of Nier and says, well, Nier, I win. That bit him in the ass.
Oh my God.
And of course, when he begged Ryuk to write names in the Death Note, like, that was a big mistake.
Yeah. When he starts, like, gloating and talking with, like, Mikami before, like, they actually even, like, activate the heart attacks. Mm-hmm. It's just like... You're kind of jumping the gun here, Light.
Yeah. Also, just a side note, doesn't really have much to do with anything. One of my favorite parts about that last volume of Death Note is that bit where Light is trying to keep himself from laughing, and I'm just like, dude, don't get ahead of yourself. Like, it's so funny to see him, like, already reading the series and knowing what happens. Like, that scene feels so much more, like, gratifying, because it's like, oh, he's not gonna win, fucking asshole. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
Yeah, the whole time I was reading that, I'm like, okay, so how is he gonna lose? This plan seems, like, airtight. And after, like, Nier reveals what he did, I'm just like, oh, fucking Light, you got fucked.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so, DSO's final question is, what is the dumbest thing L has ever done in the series?
That's a really good question. I don't really know if there are a lot of holes in L's plans to. I guess really the only thing holding him back, I think, in some cases, were just, the rest of the task force not entertaining the thought of Light being Kira at all.
I think the dumbest thing L ever did was give Light the death note in the helicopter. I mean, there's no way he could have known that would trigger Light getting his memories back, but just trusting Light with the death note, even though he suspected him of being Kira, that allowed Light to kill off people right then and there.
I mean, to be fair, Light also kind of just grabs it from him.
Yeah, but he doesn't, take it back. He just lets Light keep it. And, when Light asks him, hey, can I cross-reference, the names written down at this with the people who died? L is sure. That was a mistake. That allowed Light to go forward with his plan.
Yeah, I guess the big problem there is that L just didn't know a lot of stuff about the Death Note.
He didn't know about the possession, but that was a big mistake that he made that ultimately cost him his life.
Yeah.
Letting Light touch the notebook.
Oh, actually, I have going back to dumbest things that Light's done. I can't believe I didn't think about this. The thing that started it all, Light killing Lindell Taylor on TV.
Yeah. That was an obvious ruse that he fell for.
Yeah. And that was, pretty much just an impulse kill on his part.
Yeah, that actually might be the dumbest thing he's done.
Yeah, it speaks to, his childish impulses.
Which, goddamn, that's still, one of the best moments in the entire series.
Yeah, but that does it for questions. Thank you, Gunsword Fist. And remember, guys, to send questions for this show and others to our email, mangamaverics@gmail.com, or tweet at us on Twitter at @manga_mavericks, or post them in the thread on Animation Revelation, just the Manga Mavericks thread on Animation Revelation, or just wherever you can find and contact us. But I think that finally does it for this episode on the Death Note live-action Netflix movie.
Finally.
Which, to reiterate, we can't really recommend at all.
Not really, no.
But thank you for coming on, Colton, and discussing this movie with us. It was a fun 2 hours.
No problem. I'm glad that we at least got 2 good podcasts out of this stupid movie.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a complete waste, but so you can find me on Twitter at SniperKing323. That's SNIPERKING323. I do a few other podcasts, just to name them real quick. If you're a fan of Gintama, go listen to Life Lessons, the Gintama Manga Cast, at gintalifelessons.wordpress.com. There's also One Podcast Prevails, if you are a fan of Detective Conan / Case Closed, whatever you want to call it, at onepodcastprevails.wordpress.com. And every once in a while, I'm on the Animanga Podcast. I actually, just earlier today, not to date this recording, but I actually did an episode, again, about the live-action Death Note movie there, so if you want to...
Really?
Yeah, I was a bit more positive in that one, but after being on here, I am less positive about the movie now.
I'll have to link that in the description so people can see both your takes between these two different
The
podcasts.
slow corruption of Colton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
How through the course of one day, your opinion on the movie took a 180.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Definitely go to animangapodcast.com if you want to hear the episodes I'm on, or really just listen to the show in general. I really like recording with Jammer and Dominic. Hopefully we can have them on Manga Mavericks at some point.
How about you, Wheelord? Where can people find you?
The people can find me on Twitter at VLordGTZ, that is VLORDGTZ. If you want to talk about JoJo or Conan or whatever I'm reading or watching, you can hit me up on there. I'm also under that name on My Anime List and a bunch of other places. Pretty much any place that is VLordGTZ is probably me.
Yep. And as for me, you can find me as @LaMamiyasha on Twitter, Tumblr, My Anime List, Animation Revolution. Anywhere you see a guy named LaMamiyasha, you can assume that is me. As for the show, you can follow the show on Twitter at manga_mavericks, on Tumblr at mangamavericks.tumblr.com. On our YouTube, just search for Manga Mavericks. Remember, guys, we need those 100 subscribers to get that custom URL. So please like and subscribe our content on there, and on iTunes, which we could also use some ratings and reviews. So look us up and write us some reviews on there as well. That really helps the show out. But of course, you can find all of our podcasts first on all-comic.com. That's where we post these podcasts up first. For every podcast related to the Manga Mavericks brand, be it Manga Mavericks Add Movies, and other spin-off shows that happen every now and again, like manga fights, and then other stuff that we recorded but haven't released yet.
How far are you in that Monster Girl manga fight?
Oh, that should come out soon. Depending on when you're listening to this. So look out for those. Follow allcomic.com on Twitter at all_comic. So you can follow that account there. Also on Facebook, all-comic. And also the site could really use their help, so support our GoFundMe. Link is in the description. Every dollar counts, guys, so it would really be big help, because this show would not be able to happen without the support of the site. So definitely follow us on all our social media platforms, and the same for our All Comic site. This was another great episode of At Movies, the show formerly called Movie Mavericks, before we realized that name was taken.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you in the next one, I suppose.
See ya.
Whenever that'll be, whenever we'll get around to editing that. You know, this freaking backlog of a dozen of them, I'm sure. We'll see.
Oh, God.
See ya.
Later.